next 2 days, we all get to talk about the topic you probably still can't quite figure out how to explain to your family. Yes, I am talking about design systems. This is our third year of Converge, and truly thank you for joining us here in Brighton. We've got folks here from all over the world, so we really appreciate you making the trip to be here with us. It's going to be a really fun 2 days. My name is Madelin, as Luke very kindly introduced me. I am the head of product here at zeroheight. And in a few months, zeroheight will be celebrating our 10th birthday. Woo! Got some people. Thank you. It felt fitting to kick off this day talking a bit about the last 10 years. So yes, I will talk a bit about zeroheight, but I'm also going to talk about kind of the more collective experience of what's kind of been going on in the design system world in the last 10 years. So I'll start by mentioning my experience getting into the design system world and, to be honest, trying to make sense out of it. So I joined zeroheight 2.5 years ago. There I am. Whilst I had been in product for probably 6 years at that point, I had never worked with design systems closely before. Actually, can I just ask all of you, how many of you are like new-ish to design systems? I realize this is a design system conference, but nice. Okay, cool. So at least there's a handful of people that won't have any idea if I'm talking absolute shit. That's great to know. No, but honestly, from the start, or at the start, I should say, design systems seemed simple enough to me. I had felt the pain myself of the design to engineering pass-off, 1,000 comments on Jira tickets, spacing being wrong, corner radiuses being off. It was so tedious, and there had to be a better way. I actually sort of wondered, how did product teams get anything done or work efficiently at all before they had this central set of components, guidelines, patterns, tokens, before design systems? So yes, my naive thought was like, yeah, what's the big deal? You get a bunch of stuff, you put it all in the same place, and then your product team will adhere to those guidelines. No more digging around design files or answering the same question over and over and over. Products are being shipped at the speed of light, and I figured it out. You know, it was so rapidly, too, that I just distilled the very essence of design systems. This is completely not true. I had definitely incorrectly conflated two concepts early on. The first being the need for design systems being clear and how to actually build, maintain, and get folks to adopt a design system being clear. Turns out they're very, very different things. Who knew? In retrospect, this reality actually took me a while to fully accept. I was so determined to become an expert on design systems. I wanted to find that silver bullet, that one magic key that could unlock how any product team could ship quality UX more consistently. But the more I spoke to product teams, design system teams, the more it became clear that the task at hand was not black or white, like in the slightest. And because of the evolving opinions, tools, and approaches in the design system space, shades of gray continued to emerge. To throw another spanner in the works, I also learned that design systems are often tasked with the less tangible sort of assignment of changing behavior and culture within a product organization. I mentioned the shades of gray thing, right? Okay, good. It became apparent to me that design systems weren't just aiming to be a source of truth, they were also often a paradigm shifter for product organizations. Right, so I finally got over this dream that I could capture this like finite bit of knowledge that would just unlock design systems. And that was for the best. In accepting the nuances, which annoyingly works in every area of my life every time, I really started to learn at that point. And luckily, with zeroheight having been in the design system game for about 10 years, I learned a lot from our founders, my teammates, our customers. For a relatively new concept like design systems, 10 years means zeroheight has been in the room for a pretty healthy part of that overall timeline. And yes, if you were wondering, this timeline is exhaustive and 100% scientifically accurate. While being in the room for 10 years certainly doesn't mean that we're kind of an all-knowing source of everything design systems, my hope in talking with you all today is I can share some observations and thoughts through my zeroheight lens, of course, about where design systems have been and where they might be headed. Should we get into it? Cool. Right, so for me, there are three main things that I've learned as I've gotten familiar with design systems. The first is one size does not fit all. Product teams are really unique little ecosystems. I'm sure most of us are very familiar with that concept. But there are lots of factors that might impact a product team's sort of design system specific needs. Things like, how much does the design system need to align with higher level company goals? How many resources does that design system team have to actually build or maintain the design system? How bought in are engineers? What unique challenges does that product team have as it relates to communication, prioritization, decision making? I could go on and on and on. Variables, of course, always exist, but I do find design system teams to have a pretty unique combination of them. Second is, we're in a system inception. What I mean by this is, we are trying to build a system for building a system within a system. We don't have time right now to get too existential or dive, down this rabbit hole together. Maybe later after we all put alcohol in our bodies. But it's definitely a layered, nuanced challenge with lots of different variables about who to involve, when to get buy-in, from who, for what reasons, all of those things. And thirdly, design systems are growing up. I think it's interesting to reflect on that design systems haven't been a part of how product teams function for very long. And we're all trying to become experts on this thing that is still changing all the time. How do we stay in touch with the core problems that we're trying to solve in this really changing landscape? This is what I really want to dig into together today. So like a true product manager, I made us a roadmap. So we've already talked about my personal intro into understanding design systems. I also want to touch on zeroheight's early days and some of the things that we learned from the customers and the market then. We'll talk about some industry shifts. I'll get some of my zeroheight teammates to join me for that bit. And then I want to talk about what might the future of design systems look like, maybe even give you a question or two to chew on for the rest of your time at Converge. So let's back up a bit. I'd like to rewind to where things were in zeroheight's early days. I am very much picking details from a long and varied history that were shared with me from our founders. So Robin and Jerome, are you here? Will you give us a wave? It's gonna be really embarrassing if they're not here. Yay! If you guys want the real story, go harass them at some point during the conference. But almost 10 years ago, Robin and Jerome met working as engineers at a little startup called Bloomberg. They were bouncing ideas off of each other early on. and excited about solving a real and pervasive problem together. Soon their conversations were circling around how designers and developers often have shared goals and collaborate closely but are still working very much in silos. The time and effort that went into bridging that gap represented a big opportunity space. Plus, kind of soon after that thinking, Airbnb and Salesforce were sharing their approaches to design systems. So the market was really buzzing with words like design systems and design ops. They started by focusing on automating the pass-off of components. What they learned from those early research discussions, even with a better way to share components, customers still felt as though things were too scattered. Teams really wanted a place to organize their components and easily update them before they could even think too in-depth about automation. Here is a diagram that Robin and Jerome shared with me, a sort of aha moment after some of those initial stages of customer research. The need for a central place to gather these components in that second layer, right, so documentation, turns out was the real pervasive problem then. Luckily, Robin and Jerome focused on the user problem as opposed to what they were most excited about. And we really leaned into documentation. So this is one of the earliest iterations of the zeroheight style guide, a better way to organize, update, and share your design system. So the reason I bring this up is not for the sake of a zeroheight history lesson. I think it's interesting as it relates to where the market was even like 5-ish years ago. There has been this larger goal sort of present in the collective consciousness of design systems, right? Ship better products faster. But I think the way the market responded years ago is a testament to how many small shifts have to happen along the way. So the market says, yes, we're bought into what design systems can do for us, but are we ready right now to entirely upend the way that we work? And what are the stepping stones in reaching that larger goal of shipping products faster, and what order do they need to occur in? So I'd say back then, the biggest pain point wasn't the automation of design to code just yet. People needed a way to step back, organize, get their thoughts out, examples, rules, links, and distribute that easily to designers and engineers alike. By 2022, we saw other tools like Supernova and Knapsack come on the scene and create more capabilities within the design system space. These products, I'm sure you're familiar with them, have promises like ship your design system straight from Figma, design system management, build better products faster. Some edging more towards engineers, others towards large enterprises. This was an interesting time for zeroheight, to be honest. With features in Figma also advancing in support of design systems, we had to tap back into some first principles. What needs are not being addressed by the new tools that are coming on the market? And what does zeroheight want to be, and what are we not trying to be? After so much change, it was time for us to revisit this question again. In this process, in this new landscape, we needed to zoom out. Whilst being in the weeds day to day as a product person and user research and in-depth conversations, it can be difficult to stay on top of this more like general industry market sentiment. So in this zooming out exercise, I found particular value in chatting with my customer-facing teammates about what they're seeing when they're talking so much to people day in, day out. Sort of having their pulse on the market in a different way. I think you all might find some of these insights useful as well. So I'm going to ask two of my zeroheight teammates to join me on stage for a little mini panel. Tim and Nef, will you come up, please? Let's give them some love, guys. Tim and Nef. Do you guys have mic? Yeah, you have mics. Cool. All right, let's do it.
Let's do it. Oh, it's working. Hi, everyone.
Woo! Cool. Do you guys want to introduce yourself really quickly so everyone can know who you are and chat to you later as well?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. I am Nef. I am on the product marketing team here at zeroheight and get the opportunity to talk to folks all the time about what challenges they're facing in their design systems and how we can help.
And I'm Tim. I joined zeroheight in August of 2020. I was employee number 9. And yeah, I think I spoke to about 1,000 design system teams over the past 4 years. And yeah, there's been some interesting shifts, as you mentioned earlier.
No big deal.
No big deal.
Almost 1,000. Cool, thank you. So Tim, I'm actually going to start with you. You kind of touched on it already, but very briefly. But I'm really curious to know, when you were talking to design systems 4 years ago, what were the biggest problems that they were facing?
Yeah, I think a lot of teams were still selling the concept of a design system and showing the benefit of it to external stakeholders. And having good documentation was a big part of that. I think a lot of it was very design driven as well at the time. Usually they took the lead and they were going to set up, you know, typography, color palettes, things like that. And a little bit of a siloed approach still. So design teams and developer teams were trying to figure out how they could collaborate better. And I think the tools at the time, you know, a lot of folks were still using Sketch. Yeah, Figma was only just coming on the market. And I think the tools out there just, yeah, enforce that siloed approach. But I think we've come a long way. And we're doing better every day. So
Yeah, so just to like put us back there, so you started during COVID, right? During the pandemic.
yes.
And there was sort of this explosion of like, how do we collaborate better while we're not in the same place? Will you tell me about some of the workarounds that people were doing before some of these collaboration, like newer like ways to collaborate?
Yeah, people were still sending around PDFs, you know, with different styles or a style guide. Yeah,
Yeah.
PDFs, a static document. It's not great. So yeah, teams were still figuring out how to collaborate better, and yeah, I think we played a big part of that.
Yeah, hopefully. Okay, cool. I'm trying not to go down too many rabbit holes here, so thank you. What about now?
Well, you know, if you look at the tools that are being used right now, I think Figma is the biggest tool out there, and they kind of, you know, encourage that collaboration with Dev Mode and Code Connect to really bring those two teams together. And yeah, I think they're doing a great job. I think when it comes to design systems, people are looking for, you know, things like automation, making it easier to document something. And I think the concept of a design system is very much, you know, embraced right now compared to 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like, okay, people have gotten everything in one place, and now maybe they are more so ready to automate, right? As opposed to just like, what is the lay of the land in the first place?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Nef, will you tell me about, yeah, how you've seen kind of design system like approaches shifting? Do you feel like the way that things are being messaged or expressed has shifted over time?
Yeah, totally. I think on your slides before, you had atomic as one of the first things that happens in design systems. And one of the things that I found to be really comforting about atomic design when I joined 2 years ago was that it felt like a very linear process and something that you could get behind. You say, okay, I have my components, and eventually I'm able to move on to patterns, and everything sort of scaffolds for me as a design system practitioner to be able to go from relatively small things to something that's relatively large. I think the other thing that happens is that back then we were thinking a little bit more about design systems as being able to serve designers and sort of saying, okay, we have 5 designers and hundreds of engineers or some other sort of ridiculous ratio. How can we get more reusable about the things that we're doing so that we can serve this really broad audience in a good way? And I think now, even if the name is design systems, we sort of have accepted that design systems are for entire product teams. And we want to be able to create a bridge between what design is doing and what developers are doing. And not necessarily that design systems start with designers and end with designers, but that it is a collaborative space for everybody to be able to contribute to and to be able to benefit from.
Yeah. Nice, thank you. I'm like, oh, wow, who is this? Who's this person? Thank you.
Maybe a little mic drop.
I'm now thinking about the things you just said. I want to talk a little bit about like measurement. And I know it was something you and I were speaking about the other day of like, how design teams, design system teams sort of know that their design system is somehow working or successful. And I think, Tim, you mentioned that at the start, almost like the act of documenting was the most important tool to actually get buy-in about what a design system even is, right? So it was like, here, I'm gonna put all of this here. This is how much easier this is going to be. Yeah. So it's almost like there wasn't a need for additional like metrics at that point. It was just like, we should do this and here's how it'll work. So I'm curious about kind of that measurement piece or like success metrics, both from is this design system effective, but also from the point of view of proving value to, you know, people controlling the budget or stakeholders.
Yeah, I think when we, as a company, got into analytics, we were looking at style guide views, you know. How often are people visiting this site that they've set up? I think the more we get into it, right now, it's like, how do we actually prove the value of the design system that we built? And I think it's a very interesting space that, you know, we're still trying to figure out. I don't think anyone has figured it out just yet. You know, what is the source of truth? Is it code? Is it the design system itself? You know, but yeah, I feel like that is where the future of the product lies.
Yeah. It's like still, I would agree. I would agree with that.
We're still figuring it out. Any ideas are welcome.
How about you, Nef?
Yeah, I think if we take it back from the lens of zeroheight for a second and sort of overgeneralize and say that when design systems started, they were a side project for many teams outside of the Airbnb, Salesforce, Atlassians of the world. And I think when it is something that you are doing for your own time in order to make your own team more effective, the types of metrics that you care about are a lot different. And a lot of times are pretty qualitative in nature. If I'm working with Tim, I can turn to him and say, hey, are things going better for you, Tim? Like, do you think that you're working faster? And if the answer is yes, I can sort of hang my hat on that and say that then the design system is effective. But as the industry has gotten more mature. We've asked for more money, dedicated design system teams, dedicated design system tools. I think what has been a natural effect of that is going to senior leadership and saying, hey, I want more investment in a design system, and then those folks coming back to us and saying, okay, but what does it get us? And having to have a conversation about what design systems are going to be able to provide in terms of business value. So I think we've seen a little bit of that, and even if we take it back to zeroheight, some of it is how many design system components are making their way into design system code, and based off of that, how might I be able to extrapolate the amount of money that I've saved, the amount of developer time that I've been able to make more effective. And I think even beyond that, we see teams get a lot more creative about what impact they're providing. I spoke to a bank over in the United States, and they had a really big metric in terms of how many people are starting mortgage applications. And obviously, they're a bank, so people want to start mortgage applications so that they can lend us money and then charge us boatloads of interest. But because they were measuring that from a business perspective, the design system team sort of wanted to hang their hat on that and say, hey, we have an impact on that metric as well. So they had a page that was not a part of the design system. They said, okay, we're gonna change it up. We're gonna put some design system components on this page, and then we're going to measure how many more people are starting mortgage applications after the design system team has sort of had their hands on it. And what they found was that there was a substantial impact. And not all of us are necessarily in that position where we might be able to say, hey, this is what it looked like prior to us working our magic, and this is what it looks like after we've been able to work our magic. But I think the more that we tie our metrics to business value and to actual dollars and cents, the better we are at proving why we need to exist. And it's unfortunate that that's the case, but I think that that is something that is common for lots of teams outside of design system teams as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that, like, I don't know, I almost see a world where a design system isn't this like separate concept we have to sell. It's just like a way that product teams work. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I feel like we're
totally.
in that in between space still.
Yeah, I think when you and I spoke about it, we said that we know that good design is good for products, right? Like, I think that we have universally accepted that. We know that good user experience is good for products, and that products that prioritize great user experience do better than those that don't. So I think when we sort of universally accept that the way to prioritize good design and to prioritize good user experience is to use design systems, then we're in a really, really good place for this to be systemically accepted.
Yeah. Love it. I need to check the time, actually, how long we've been talking. Cool. I think I could talk to you both all day, but I think I'm going to leave it there unless either of you have anything else you want to shout out.
No? Get me off this stage.
All right.
Yeah, so many people here. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you, Madeline.
Thank you guys so much. Can I get this seat too? Amazing. Listen, it's zeroheight's offsite as well as this conference, so there's been a couple late nights. We're all a little fragile, so thank you, Tim and Nef. That was awesome. Okay, so we've talked briefly about where things were when zeroheight started their journey, and what the last couple of years have looked like in terms of more options and awareness coming onto the scene. Since Converge is a place for our community to learn from each other, I'll ask you to join me jumping down this rabbit hole of what might be next. So the shift, oh goodness, don't do that. Nice. The shift from scattered components to documentation that we saw in zeroheight's earlier days was a really important one. Docs gave design systems a sort of house to come together within. But because there are more tools, opinions, and changing approaches, I think we could use a bigger house with more rooms and nice, well-lit hallways so that you can easily find what you're looking for. A place where you can gather. A place you don't have to leave often to get something that you need. Let's get more specific. Although I'm not a designer, right? So just be gentle with me. I was pretty proud of that roof. I mean, that's precision. I'm going to revisit this initial outline that Robin and Jerome shared with me from their thinking years ago. See the cute little house and the pyramid? I'm fusing these metaphors together. Nice. I see a world where this pyramid expands to something like this. So the difference I see here is more clarity, really, about what those three initial levels really mean. You'll notice the first two layers, right? So share components, document, build, document. There's a lot of overlap there. But where I see things really expand and shift is sort of from the design system management piece and how that could be pulled apart a little bit more. And as a result, a vision of what a central hub, a bigger house, broader design system management could develop into. I realize that these words, especially in this room, could mean slightly different things to different teams. I'll focus on how I'm defining them for this conversation. I found trying to find the perfect word is largely a distraction. You do not want to see how many drafts I have of this very simple triangle with words in it. So what do I really mean by each of these layers? In the build stage, things like components, patterns, tokens, icons, or rules and guidelines need to be constructed and agreed upon. Often when we say build or create in the design system context, we think more about components. I'm referencing rules and guidelines here as well, because often through the exercise of documenting, there's another process that's actually happening kind of underneath the surface. You're building, you're agreeing on the rules that should live in the documentation. The jobs to be done in that process are different than simply documenting, and it's an important distinction from our next layer here. Codifying those elements in documentation has a lot of benefits. This is likely a fairly well-trodden concept for most of us. So context has been articulated, files are connected and being updated without fuss. And in the case of a doc site, information is easy to publish to consumers. Then we can think about the deliver stage. We've got the information in one place. How can we make it easy to actually get those elements into the hands of those building the products? And this is not only about components or tokens. This could also be about rules, guidelines, better ways to get those to people other than just defaulting to, let's say, coming to a doc site. Having a published site is one way to deliver these things, of course, but it certainly is not the only way. Measure, you can probably tell this is a space I am especially excited about. The task of understanding the impact of your design system, a sense of true adoption in that products being shipped are benefiting from those building blocks in your design system is not a straightforward exercise. I know from talking to so many teams that they're still relying on qualitative feedback, surveys, big meetings, conversations, to know if their design system is working. Also, like we talked about, proving value to stakeholders as well is really hard. But as Nef and Tim mentioned, this is certainly a need that's becoming more and more relevant, more and more pressing, and I think a really worthy cause to sort of explore and push further. And finally, evolve. Find the biggest problems in your design system overall, not just your docs, and improve. This is so unique to every product team because, again, we're not just talking about a design system, we're talking about how your product team functions, how they ship things. And if you don't have a central place to manage all of these different moving parts, it's really difficult to get a clear picture of overall product team effectiveness. And without that sense, where do you focus your time? Especially when so many of us have limited resources to put towards our design system. How do you grow and improve? So let's say on the whole, things are like kind of mostly here, right? So I know you're all in different stages, but let's just say, for the most part, these two concepts are really familiar kind of in the community. So what might it look like to push forward upwards on this pyramid? 3 main things come to mind. Full warning, things are going to get really jargony for a moment. Are we ready for it? Maybe we can iterate on some synergies and circle back. I'm glad people laughed at that and didn't think I actually meant that for real. Hopefully, as I give more detail, these words will become less abstract and buzzwordy. The first thing is workflow automation. This has a lot to do with being able to deliver the assets and elements of your design system. And having a central place to configure how information flows in and out of your design system is becoming more and more important. Even better would be that those workflows automatically trigger at the right times so that you're spending less time doing the same thing over and over. That's mostly requiring repeated actions. Insights also really stand out to me. I almost see this as design system intelligence. The act of measuring is really important, but what do you actually do then with that measurement? What are the insights that actually emerge from that data, and what actions should you take? Also, how can you make sure that you're collecting inputs from all across your design system to give you a full picture of overall sort of health so that you can make the best informed choices for your team? And lastly, governance. Governance. This term in particular feels like it means very different things to different teams. But the way I see it, especially as it relates to evolution, is governance means cleaner decision making. Maintaining simplicity past the point of just that initial stage of your design system. Governance sets you up for being able to evolve in the direction that you want to go in as your design system grows and scales over time. The layers I'm mentioning here are not brand new, right? We kind of all know these big themes of, build, automate, codify. They've been knocking around the design system conversation and the product development conversation for some time. But it's been difficult to pin down a way to actually address these things more largely, more holistically. So what would this actually look like to support all of these different things? What is the concept of this bigger house? What do I really mean by that? What could that actually look like? I'll call back to my comment at the start regarding one size not fitting all. I think that actually highlights a really interesting opportunity. What if we could give any and every product team a full context of their design system so that they can take the most impactful actions for them in any unique stage they might find themselves in? Something maybe like this concept. Don't worry, zeroheight product team. This is conceptual. A centralized, insightful perspective that sits over the top of the layers that we've been talking about. A way to see how the moving parts are aligning, what gaps need bridging, what information is flowing in and flowing out of your design system, where the bottlenecks are or the inefficiencies, and as a result, how to most effectively evolve, how to grow up. If we only look at the individual layers we discussed in that pyramid, in their own silos, without something like a larger framing, we could easily miss a bigger opportunity. The big picture of your design system, and regardless of where it is, seeing what it could become. So, back to my final learning I said I wanted to dig into today. Design systems are indeed growing up. They are changing a lot. We talked about my own journey trying to figure out how design systems work. We talked a little bit about what zeroheight learned in our early days, the things in the industry that have shifted, the market changing. We even had a mini panel. And while I've spoken about some things around what could be next, this last section isn't quite done. I want to ask you all a question to consider for the rest of your time here. What might evolution look like for your design system? What might your design system look like in 5 years? And what are insights that you have access to right now or could tap into when you're back at work that might inform the right next step for how your design system might evolve? Thank you, everyone, for listening to my thoughts today. And of course, thank you, Robin and Jerome, for all of those years ago getting us a ticket into the design system world with all of you wonderful people. I really hope you enjoy Converge and get as much out of each other over the next 2 days as zeroheight has gotten being a part of this community for the last 10 years. Thanks, everyone.
Give it up for Madelin!